One second, my wife was screaming in my ear, cursing me for skipping work to go fishing. The next second, I was sitting in my own backyard. In front of me stood a woman with exquisite features and a boy who looked like he was carved from porcelain. The memories of the original host flooded in. This was my wife, Sarah Vance, and she was mute. This was my son, Finn Harper, 5 years old. I was ecstatic. A mute wife. That meant no one would ever nag me again. I grabbed my son, shouldered my fishing rod, and began a life of paradise, fishing at sunrise, returning at sunset. That was until the day I caught a 40-inch muskie. In a rush, I grabbed my wife's Hermes bag sitting by the door and shoved the fish inside. She pointed at the thrashing fish in her bag, her body trembling with rage, her chest heaving violently. I thought she was going to silently condemn me with those watery eyes like she usually did. Instead, she took a deep breath, opened her mouth, and unleashed a scream that tore through the heavens. "Jack Harper, go F yourself. My name is Jack Harper, and I'm a time traveler." When I first opened my eyes, I was lounging in a wicker chair in a backyard, the sunlight perfect. A woman walked over with a fruit platter, her skin blindingly white, her features delicate. A little boy trailed behind her, eyeing me with curiosity. The memories hit me. The woman was my wife, Sarah Vance, unable to speak. The boy was my son, Finn. The joy I felt nearly blew the top of my skull off. A mute wife. This was the heaven I had always dreamed of. No one to nag me endlessly about my fishing addiction. I quickly assessed the situation. No job, but the family had some savings. A house, a car, a beautiful wife, and a cute son. Most importantly, I was free. I rushed into the storage room and dug out the original owner's long-forgotten, top-tier fishing gear. Just stroking the cold, smooth carbon fiber rod made my soul shiver. I immediately announced to my 5-year-old son, "Finn, starting today, the Rod Squad is back in business." Finn nodded, half understanding, his large dark eyes filled with adoration. The next day, I took Finn to the river for the first time. I gave him a small bamboo pole, not expecting much, but the kid had talent. He sat stiller than I did. By the end of the day, I had been skunked, but he caught 3 small sunfish. We hit it off immediately and formed the Big Finn and Little Finn team on the spot. When we got home, Sarah had dinner ready. She took our empty bucket, then looked at the pathetic little fish in Finn's bucket. She said nothing, just silently turned into the kitchen. I assumed that complicated look in her eyes was filled with admiration and love for her husband and son. From that day on, I completely let myself go. To test a new spot on the outskirts of town, I woke Finn up at 3:00 a.m. Finn, code red. Monster fish reported in Sector 4. The little guy rubbed his eyes but climbed out of bed with excitement, dressing himself. We tiptoed out like spies on a special ops mission. When Sarah woke up, she was alone in the massive house. She walked to the balcony, staring into the pitch-black night, and sighed silently. When we returned with a bucket of panfish, I bragged about our victory. "Sarah, look, this is all your son's doing. The legacy is secure." She just nodded quietly, took the bucket, and expertly began scaling and gutting. I enjoyed this tranquility with a clear conscience. I even compiled my fishing wisdom into a notebook, scrawling the Angler's Bible on the cover. I solemnly held an initiation ceremony for Finn, making him bow 3 times to the fishing rod. Sarah watched from the side, her face expressionless. But soon I pushed my luck too far. On our wedding anniversary, I completely forgot. I didn't remember until I got home that night and saw the candlelight dinner and a bottle of wine on the table. Sarah was wearing a beautiful dress, clearly having dressed up for the occasion. I slapped my forehead. I had just a thing. Like I was presenting a treasure, I pulled a 5-pound walleye, the biggest catch of the day, out of the bucket behind me. "Sarah, happy anniversary. Look, a gift for you. Fresh catch." Sarah looked at the fish flopping on the floor, water flicking on her face from its tail. She looked at the cold, untouched dinner. The light in her eyes shifted from calm to ice cold for the first time. Oblivious, I kept analyzing the catch. This guy fought hard for 10 minutes. It'll be delicious pan-fried tomorrow. She turned and walked upstairs without a word. I was still wondering what bait would work best the next day. The next morning, I was prepping to leave when I found my favorite, discontinued custom rod snapped at the tip. The break was clean, like it had been snapped on purpose. My heart shattered. That rod and I had history. My first suspect was Finn. "Talk. Did you break Dad's baby?" I grabbed his ear, interrogating him fiercely. Finn looked like he was about to cry, his face innocent. "Daddy, it wasn't me." The rod said it wanted to rest. He'd say the darndest things, but I was fuming. With no proof, I let it go. I grabbed my backup rod and went to mix my secret fatal attraction bait. As soon as I opened the jar, a fresh scent of lemon hit me. My secret formula of expensive attractants was completely masked by the smell of lemon dish soap. I decided it was the weather. The fish wouldn't bite today, anyway. When I got home, I found my tackle box had been used as a garbage can. It was stuffed with rotten lettuce and fruit peels. My prize bobbers and hooks were soaking in foul-smelling sludge. I broke down. I started suspecting a third party in the house, or maybe something unclean. That night, I sprinkled a line of salt across the doorway, supposed to ward off bad spirits. The next morning, Sarah stepped over the salt, walked into the kitchen, gave me a deadpan look, grabbed a broom, and swept my barrier into the trash. Then came the vest. My fishing vest, a military green battle armor with dozens of pockets, each holding my trophies of war. Now, it had been accidentally thrown into the wash with a load of whites and bleach by Sarah. It came out a psychedelic tie-dye pink. I had no choice but to wear the pink vest to the fishing spot. Yo, Jack, changing your style? Trying to catch a mermaid? That color is bold. We should call you the Pink Fisher Vixen. The mockery from the other anglers buzzed around me like flies. I felt my dignity being ground into the dirt. I was finally certain someone was sabotaging me. I narrowed my suspects down to two people, my son Finn and Mr. Henderson next door, who was always overly polite to my wife. To catch the culprit, I spent a fortune on a hidden camera and planted it in a houseplant in the living room. I stare at my phone screen, waiting. All day, I only saw Sarah cleaning and taking care of Finn, her life as regimented as a robot. Just as I was about to give up, she finished cleaning and walked over to the plant where I hid the camera to water it. She looked up, staring directly into the lens. On that typically emotionless face, a meaningful, terrifying smile slowly appeared. That smile made the hair on my back stand up. The community announced a major fishing tournament with a grand prize of $5,000 cash. I pinned all my hopes on this. If I won, I could update my gear and restore the glory of the Rod Squad. On the day of the competition, I was in the zone. While everyone else was getting skunked, my rod suddenly bent into a perfect crescent moon. A monster. I fought it for nearly half an hour, my arms screaming, until I finally dragged it ashore. A muskie nearly 40 inches long. The crowd went wild. Everyone gathered to see the king of the lake. I hoisted the fish, basking in the cheers like a returning general. I couldn't wait to get home and show off this supreme glory to Sarah. But when I got to the car, I realized the Live Well bucket was leaking, soaking the trunk. This wouldn't do. A dead fish loses value. I parked in the driveway, frantic. As soon as I walked in, I saw a brand new orange bag on the hallway console. The leather looked sturdy, the capacity was huge, and the stitching was tight. I lit up. Amazing quality, definitely leak-proof. Without thinking, I grabbed the struggling muskie and, with a wet thud, shoved it inside along with some water. It fit perfectly. Just then, Sarah came down the stairs. She was in her loungewear, hair in a messy bun, likely hearing the commotion. Then, she saw the horror show. Her limited edition Hermes Birkin bag. The one she waited 3 months on a list for, sourced from France. The one she hadn't even used yet. Right now, it reeked of fish slime and was pulsing rhythmically as the fish gasped for air. I completely missed the gravity of the situation and greeted her with excitement. Sarah, look, the king. I caught the king of the lake. We're having a feast tonight. I pointed at the bag, beaming with pride. Sarah's face went from pale to red, from red to purple, and finally settled on a terrifying shade of iron gray. She extended a finger, pointing at the bag, her hand shaking like she had Parkinson's. Totally oblivious, I slapped the side of the bag heartily. Don't worry, it's a solid bag. I'll wash it out for you later. You can still use it. Honestly, it's the ultimate tackle bag. Finn ran out of his room, saw the scene, hugged Sarah's leg, and said in his innocent voice, Mommy, don't cry. Daddy said when he gets rich, he'll buy you 10 of these grocery baskets. That sentence was the final straw. Sarah stared death at me, her chest heaving violently. She took a deep breath, drawing on every ounce of strength in her body. Then she opened her mouth and erupted with a clear, resonant, fury-filled scream. Jack Harper, go F yourself. The sound echoed through the entire villa, making my eardrums ring. I froze, petrified, my mind a blank slate. Wasn't she mute? I stood there like a wooden post, mouth gaping. I pointed at her, stammering, You can talk. Sarah looked at me like I was a complete moron. She let out a cold laugh filled with ice shards. If I didn't speak up, you'd tear this house down brick by brick. She snatched the pulsating Hermes bag and threw it on the floor. The muskie slid out, flopping wildly on the hardwood. "Jack, get over here." She pointed at the living room sofa, her tone leaving no room for argument. It was the first time I'd seen her like this. My knees actually went weak, and I obediently sat down. She began her post-game analysis. "2 weeks ago, did you take my new La Mer essence water and pour it on your precious earthworms?" My brain buzzed. I remembered. That bottle of water smelled like fermented nutrients. I thought it would bulk up the worms. "Last week, the cashmere scarf my mother gave me. Did you cut it up to polish your rods?" My neck went cold. That did happen. The fabric felt amazing, soft, lint-free, perfect for carbon fiber maintenance. "And yesterday, you dumped the entire tub of protein powder I bought you into your bait mix, claiming the fish needed to bulk up." I just thought high protein meant active fish. She listed them one by one. I broke out in a cold sweat. I realized that what I thought was repurposing waste was, in her eyes, sheer destruction. I whispered a defense. "I didn't know that stuff was expensive." "You didn't know?" Sarah's voice spiked. "Of course you didn't. You only know how much your stupid rods cost. You only know the formula for your bait." I was rendered speechless, so I asked the most critical question. "Then, why didn't you speak before?" At the mention of this, the fire in her eyes extinguished, replaced by a cold, dead silence. She looked at me and said, word by word, because the old Jack Harper was a hopeless gambling addict. He lost our savings. He came home drunk and threw punches. I didn't want to fight with him, and I didn't want Finn living in a war zone. So I chose silence. The truth detonated in my brain. The paradise I thought I had stumbled into was actually a massive ruin. I thought after you got beaten half to death at the casino and woke up, you had changed, that you were done with gambling. Her voice trembled with despair. But no, you just jumped from one pit into a deeper one. Before, a gambling addict. Now a fishing lunatic. My husband died at that card table long ago. She pointed at me. You're just a stranger living in his body who cares about nothing but fishing. I was stunned. I thought I was here to enjoy life, but it turned out I was here to atone for sins. I finally truly looked at the woman in front of me, seeing the exhaustion deep in her eyes, the disappointment, and the toughness forged by a hard life. Just as the atmosphere in the room was about to freeze solid, ding-dong, the doorbell rang. Sarah walked over and opened it. A man in a sharp suit, radiating power, stood there. He saw the mess in the room, the fish still flopping on the floor, and Sarah's red-rimmed eyes. His face instantly darkened. He pulled Sarah behind him and swept a judging gaze over me, filled with contempt. "Sarah, come home with me. How long are you going to put up with this loser?" It was Sarah's brother, Julian Vance, a man who had CEO written all over him. He walked in, and his eyes landed on the slime-covered orange bag on the floor. His pupils constricted, and a vein in his temple began to throb. "Jack Harper, did you use this? Did you use the birthday gift I bought my sister to hold your goddamn fish?" His voice sounded like it was being ground out between his teeth. I suddenly realized just how much trouble I was in. "The house you live in? I bought it. That beat-up car you drive? I bought it. You, right now, immediately get the hell out of my property." Julian pointed at my nose, ruthlessly humiliating me, both personally and financially. My head was spinning. Turns out I wasn't just a time traveler. I was a complete freeloader. Julian finished and grabbed Sarah's hand. "Sarah, listen to me. Let's go. I told you this man wasn't good enough for you." Sarah looked conflicted as he pulled her. Suddenly, Finn, who had been hiding by the bedroom door, rushed out. He hugged my leg tight, screaming through tears, "I don't want to go. I want to stay with Daddy. I want to go fishing with Daddy." My son's words injected warmth into my freezing heart. Sarah stopped. She looked at our son clinging to me, and she hesitated. She shook off Julian's hand. "Julian, this is my business. Let me handle it." Julian looked at her with frustration, then pulled a checkbook from his suit pocket, scribbled something, and threw it on the coffee table. "There's $100,000 in that account. Take it and leave my sister." The thin piece of paper felt like a slap in the face. I looked at the check, then at Sarah's determined face and my son hugging my leg. For the first time since arriving here, I chose not to lay low. I reached out and pushed the check back. "She's my wife. Finn is my son. I'm not going anywhere." My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Julian laughed like he'd heard the world's best joke. "You? Based on what?" "The fisherman who can't even recognize his wife's handbag." He adjusted his tie and gave me a final ultimatum from his high horse. "Jack Harper, I'll give you 1 week. If you can't prove you have the ability to take care of Sarah and Finn in 7 days, you leave with nothing. Don't make me force you." With that, he gave Sarah a deep look, turned, and marched out. I watched his Bentley speed away, then looked at the mess in the house and Sarah's cold face. I finally understood what real pressure felt like. Losing my wife and child was far more painful than losing a fish. I had to do something to salvage the situation. After thinking it over, I decided to start with the only thing I was good at, fish. Since I made her angry with a fish, I would make her happy with a fish. I decided to cook her a Michelin 3-star level fish feast to show my sincerity and culinary skills. I searched online for French pan-seared sea bass with lemon butter sauce. It sounded fancy. Confident, I walked into the kitchen, took the guilty muskie from the fridge, and cut a large fillet. Not sea bass, but fish is fish, right? The recipe called for butter. I couldn't find any, but I saw a jug of peanut oil. Oil is oil. The recipe called for thyme and rosemary. Never heard of them, but I found star anise and peppercorns. Their spice is close enough. I heated the pan until it smoked and poured half the jug of oil in. The moment the fish hit the pan, hot oil exploded like shrapnel on a battlefield. Thinking fast, I grabbed a pot lid as a shield, enacting a real-life version of Kitchen Spartan. Thick smoke billowed, and soon, the smoke detector screamed. Beep, beep, beep. The piercing alarm filled the house. Sarah rushed down from upstairs to see the kitchen engulfed in smoke, and me heroically fighting the stove with a lid and spatula. She didn't say a word. She silently walked to the hallway, disabled the main alarm, and opened all the windows. I finally finished the fish. Or rather, a piece of char-grilled muskie, black on the outside and bloody on the inside. I plated it on the nicest dish I could find and carefully carried it to Sarah, my face full of expectation. Sarah, taste it. A French feast I made just for you. Sarah looked at the black, unidentifiable object, then at me. She picked up her chopsticks, pinched a tiny piece, and put it in her mouth. She chewed once, kept a straight face, turned around, and spit the fish into the trash can. Finn, trying to save his dad's dignity, bravely shoved a huge chunk into his mouth. Then, clutching his mouth, he sprinted to the bathroom, followed by the sound of earth-shattering vomiting. My culinary debut ended in total failure. I was sentenced to wash dishes for a week. That night, as I fought a mountain of plates, Sarah walked in with a receipt and silently stuck it to the fridge door. I leaned in to look. It was a bill from a luxury leather care center. Service: Hermes Birkin Deep Clean, Deodorize, Restoration. The number at the bottom was 5 digits long. My heart, much like that bag, needed deep restoration. Not only did I fail to woo my wife, but I was now in massive debt. The cooking route was dead. I decided to pivot and use my son as an insider. I used a vintage limited edition kid's rod from my collection to successfully bribe Finn into becoming my spy. Finn, go ask mommy what she really likes. Get me accurate intel, and this Dragon Slayer rod is yours. Finn hugged the rod, which was taller than him, like a rare treasure, and nodded solemnly. Half an hour later, he ran back to report. Daddy, I asked. Mommy said she likes looking at shiny things. She can stare at them for a long time. Shiny things? It hit me. Don't all women love that? I immediately went online and spent big money on a massive, multicolored rotating disco party light. The next day, I installed it in the center of the living room ceiling. Once turned on, the room transformed into an 80s disco with red, green, blue, and purple beams shooting everywhere, dazzling the eyes. I fantasized about Sarah coming home from work, seeing this brilliant starry sky, and being surprised. Evening came. Sarah opened the door, stood in the entryway, and froze as she looked at the psychedelic world before her. She stood silent for a full 3 minutes, then walked to the wall and yanked the power cord. The living room returned to normal. My heart went cold. I pulled Finn aside and questioned his intel. He looked wronged. I saw Mommy staring at the little stone on her ring for a long time. I was defeated. She meant diamonds. I wasn't ready to give up. I sent Finn back in. This time he reported, Mommy said she likes small animals. Small animals. Easy. The next day, I went to the river and scooped up a bottle full of tadpoles. I carefully poured them into Sarah's favorite crystal vase, the one she usually used for expensive roses. I thought a swarm of lively tadpoles represented the miracle of life, far better than dead plants. When Sarah saw her beloved vase teeming with wriggling black dots, her face turned green. Without a word, she carried the vase to the bathroom. I could almost hear the cries of the little lives being flushed away. Still not dead yet. Finn provided a third tip. Mommy told Mrs. Higgins yesterday that she thinks Daddy smells bad. This hurt my pride. I decided to change. I raided her walk-in closet and found a bottle of perfume that looked high-end, labeled Chanel and Degree 5. Treating it like bug spray, I doused myself from head to toe. The scent was thick enough to solidify. I felt I could kill mosquitoes within a 10-yard radius. I smugly approached Sarah, who was watching TV, ready for praise. Sarah, do I smell good now? Sarah smelled the pungent cloud, and her nose crinkled instantly. She backed away, choking then. Achoo! 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 Her allergies flared up immediately, sneezing until tears ran down her face. Seeing her misery, I finally realized in despair, relying on my son was useless. This road to redemption was going to be rocky. Julian, aiming to smooth things over, but mostly to humiliate me further, organized a family gathering. The location was a hot spring resort he owned. He had creatively invited a so-called National Holistic Wellness Master to diagnose the family's energy. The master, looking like a sage with a goatee, spouted mystical jargon. He circled Julian's father, my father-in-law, twice, then stroked his beard gravely. Sir, have you felt dizzy and weak lately? Trouble sleeping? My father-in-law nodded in surprise. The master continued, I see darkness in your energy field. This is a bad omen. You need my exclusively blessed rare herbs to regulate your chi and resolve this. The Vance family, Julian included, listened with rapt attention, nodding along. But I muttered from the side, isn't that old guy the Dar? Magic who sells fake pills under the North Bridge overpass. My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet private room, it was crystal clear. Julian glared at me instantly. Jack, shut up. If you don't understand, don't speak. I ignored him and stood up, slowly walking over to the master. Master, I have a question. You say these herbs are harvested from the peaks of the Mystic Mountains, absorbing the essence of heaven and earth. So, what's the difference in medicinal properties between snow aconite and lousewort? When harvesting, do you choose the sunny slope or the shaded slope? I had learned all this while studying the Compendium of Materia Medica to create secret bait recipes. An angler will learn anything to make fish bite. The master froze, mouth gaping, unable to speak. Well, faith makes it work. Faith makes it work. I smiled and pointed to his extended hand. Master, those calluses on your hand aren't from turning ancient pages. That callus is from cranking a spinning reel for years. The shape and thickness match mine exactly. I opened my palm. I had the exact same callus. You're a fisherman too, aren't you? The master's face went pale, sweat beading on his forehead. With his cover blown, his psychological defense collapsed, and he admitted he was a fraud with a team behind him. The Vance family was shocked and furious. Julian's face looked like he had swallowed a fly. Amid the chaos, I saw Sarah looking at me. The ice and disappointment in her eyes were gone. Replacing them was a new light I couldn't quite read, but it looked like approval. Meeting her gaze, I felt a true sense of achievement for the first time outside of landing a big fish. Maybe this fisherman wasn't completely useless after all. Julian, likely feeling he had lost face, was determined to get it back. He quickly arranged a blind date for Sarah. The guy was Preston Sterling, an elite returnee from overseas whose family owned a listed company. He was handsome and had a golden resume. Julian set the meeting at a top-tier French restaurant and kindly invited me and Finn along. His goal was obvious. Let me embarrass myself publicly and see the gap between me and a true elite. At the restaurant, Preston spoke elegantly, chatting about wine vintages and the Renaissance, occasionally dropping French phrases I didn't understand. He wore a bespoke suit and a Patek Philippe watch. I wore a faded t-shirt and jeans, sitting opposite him like a hillbilly who wandered into high society. During the meal, Preston brought up his hobbies to show off his taste. Actually, I love outdoor sports like sailing and deep-sea fishing. He pulled out his phone and proudly showed a photo of himself with a massive tuna. In the photo, he stood on a yacht, holding a fish taller than him, smiling brightly. Julian immediately praised him. Preston, you really are a man of many talents. I glanced at the photo once and said calmly, it's photoshopped. The entire table went silent. Preston's face froze, and he forced a defense. Mr. Harper, you're joking. How could this be Photoshop? I put down my fork and pointed at his screen. First, the sunlight is coming from behind you at a 45-degree angle. Afternoon sun. The light on your face is warm, but the reflection on the fish is cool, overhead lighting. You and the fish aren't in the same lighting environment. Second, I paused. The rod in the photo is a light jigging rod with a 3000 series spinning reel. That spool holds maybe 200 yards of 20-pound braid max. With that gear, forget catching a 300-pound bluefin tuna. I'd be impressed if you could pull a boot up from the bottom. After I finished, you could hear a pin drop. Preston's face turned the color of raw liver. Finn delivered the killing blow right then. Uncle, you lie about fish? Shame on you. I clearly saw Sarah, who had kept her head down, let the corners of her mouth twitch upward. I caught that fleeting smile perfectly. The rest of the meal was awkward. Preston started bossing the waiters around, revealing his arrogance. I didn't say much, but I quietly cut Sarah's steak for her and peeled shrimp for Finn. When dinner ended, Preston offered to drive Sarah home in his flashy white Maserati parked right out front. Sarah shook her head. She naturally took Finn's hand and walked straight to my beat-up Buick, the fish-hauling car Julian had bought, and opened the door. It was the first time she had actively chosen to stand with me. Sitting in the driver's seat, I saw Preston and Julian frozen in the rearview mirror. For the first time, a warmth surged in my heart. But just tearing down rivals wasn't enough. I needed a career. Julian's sting about Vance family members don't work for others annoyed me, but it woke me up. I needed a real job to prove I could support this family. I started frantically sending out resumes. But with my average education and history as a loafer, I got no responses. Just as I was about to despair, I saw a job posting for a local aquaculture company hiring a water quality monitor. The requirements were odd, no degree needed, but must have extreme knowledge of all local water bodies. It was practically made for me. I went to the interview immediately. The interviewer was a middle-aged expert with glasses. He asked some very specific questions. What was the pH level of Dragon Lake during the last test? What's the dominant vegetation? I answered without thinking, pH around 7. 2. Slightly alkaline. Vegetation is mostly hydrilla and tape grass. Because they dredged the silt last year, the bottom nutrient layer is thin, bad for bottom feeders, but great for carp and bass. The expert paused, then asked, why are the fish in the West Quarry Pond getting smaller every year? Dead water. The chemical plant upstream dumped illegally years ago. Severe eutrophication caused blue-green algae blooms, lowering oxygen levels. Fish are lucky to survive. They won't grow. I knew every inch of water in this city by foot and by rod. I was hired on the spot. Not only that, but I proposed several breed improvement plans based on water types and was directly promoted to technical consultant for the hatchery base. When Julian found out, he sneered at a family dinner. I thought it was some high-level position. Turns out you're just a fish farmer. I didn't reply, but Sarah put down her chopsticks. Julian, honest work is honorable. He's feeding his family with his own skills. It's not shameful. This was the first time she defended me in front of Julian. After starting work, though tired, I stopped coming home empty-handed with just fish. I started bringing Finn his favorite snacks and Sarah cakes from the bakery she liked. Sarah didn't say anything, but my lunch changed from takeout to bento boxes she made herself, nutritionally balanced and delicious. On the day I got my first paycheck, I didn't go to the tackle shop to buy the new rod I had been eyeing. I dragged Sarah to the high-end mall downtown. I slapped my debit card on the Hermes counter. Hi, bring out your most expensive bag. But Sarah stopped me. She pulled me out of the store and pointed to the orange bag she was carrying, the one that had been professionally restored. No need. She looked at me, light in her eyes. I think this one is fine. It holds fish. It holds groceries. It's grounded. Then she smiled. Not the cold, mocking smile from before, but a genuine smile, warm as a spring breeze. In that moment, I felt like flowers were blooming all over the world. A project at the company made huge profits thanks to my technical improvements, and I got a hefty bonus. I didn't buy a car or a house. I used my connections to rent a scenic private island on a lake for a week. That weekend, I told Sarah and Finn I was taking them to a new guaranteed catch spot. Sarah thought it was my old obsession again, but came along with Finn. When the boat docked, she froze. I had decorated the island with countless strings of fairy lights and candles, making it look like a fairyland. A huge outdoor movie screen was set up by the water. I pulled out 2 brand-new rod cases from behind me. Inside were 2 identical, top-tier custom rods. I handed one to her. Sarah, I was immature before. I only thought about my own happiness fishing and ignored you and our son. From now on, I want you to share this joy with me. Or, I'll join you in whatever you like to do. I was nervous, stuttering a bit. She took the rod, silent, just looking at me. I started the projector. The screen played a video I had secretly edited. No grand events, just little moments of her and Finn. Her patience building Legos, her focus while reading, her helpless yet amused face when I destroyed the kitchen. The background music was a love song I asked a friend to record, sung by me, completely off-key. Sarah watched, laughing, until tears rolled down her face. I clumsily wiped them away. Don't cry. I sold 3 vintage rods to pay for the decorations. She laughed through her tears. I gathered my courage and hugged her. Sarah, Are you still mad at me? Buried in my chest, her voice was muffled but smiling. Depends on your performance. If you ever use my bag to hold fish again, she paused, I'll throw you in the lake to feed the fish. Just then, a speedboat quietly approached the island. Julian stood at the bow. He saw the romantic lights, saw us embracing, and saw the genuine happiness on his sister's face, a look he hadn't seen in years. He stood there silently for a long time, then waved to his driver. The boat turned around and left quietly. Some wars are won without smoke or fire. I held Sarah, feeling like I owned the world. Julian eventually expressed his approval in his own way. He acquired my aquaculture company and issued an order appointing me general manager. His reason: Vance family members don't work for others. I accepted this CEO gift with a laugh and became the literal king of fish. Life returned to a track, but a new, balanced one. One weekend afternoon, the three of us went to the lake again. I sat on my tackle box, staring intently at the bobber. Sarah lay on a lounge chair nearby, reading. Finn ran between us, chasing butterflies. The bobber suddenly dipped hard. I yanked the rod but felt nothing. Missed it. TCH. Sarah snorted without looking up. Set the hook too fast. Bad form. You were half a beat early. I wasn't having it. Easy to say. You try it. Sarah put down her book, stretched, and walked over. She picked up the top-tier rod I gave her, the one she hadn't touched yet. I thought she was bluffing. But then, she baited the hook, cast the line. The movements were fluid, professional, more graceful than even my own. The bait landed precisely on a spot 30 yards out, barely making a splash. Moments later, the bobber dipped. Sarah flicked her wrist, setting the hook instantly. The rod bent into a beautiful curve. She calmly controlled the fight, playing the fish. Minutes later, a 3-pound crappie was easily netted and brought ashore. She unhooked it and glanced at me triumphantly. I was dumbfounded, my jaw on the floor. How do you know how to do that? Sarah smiled like a sly fox, wiped her hands, and lay back on her chair with her book. Oh, I forgot to tell you. My dad was a nationally famous angler back in the day. I won the National Junior Fishing Championship when I was 5. A bolt of lightning hit my brain. The ultimate plot twist. I looked at my smiling wife, then at my son clapping and cheering, the sun dancing on the rippling lake. I suddenly realized that having a wife who could fish was 100 times better than having a mute wife. Finally, the Rod Squad had found its true queen. Story complete.